Bibliosophie. Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. It's a lot of doubles. My name is Sophie. I'm starting a new vlog. However, if you are used to this channel, you might be familiar with my weekly vlog template. I have done quite a lot of these this year, but we're keeping it fresh, we're keeping it new. This is going to just cover 2 days, 48 hours of reading. However, attention, this is not a marathon. This is not reading for 24 hours straight. This is not trying to rush to finish as many pages over the course of 48 hours. Absolutely not. If that's all you're interested in, I'm sorry. You may as well turn back now because that's just not what I'm doing. Merely, I'm reading and living, and I'm showing you what that looks like for 2 days. Am I going to try to read a little bit more because I'm being watched, because I'm watching myself so that you can watch me? Probably, I'm sure, but I'm not trying to push through. I don't have time. I have other things to do. We're just living 2 relatively normal, kind of free-ish days where I suspect I'm going to do a goodly amount of reading. I would like to do a goodly amount of reading, and I'm going to tell you about it. That's it. That's the premise. Talking is so difficult. I'm sleepy, my friends. I did not sleep enough, and then I had a busy morning. I had rehearsal, got home in the early afternoon, fed myself, and I am crashing. I'm going to probably read a little in bed and attempt not to just scroll. If I can fall asleep, that would be perfectly lovely, but I doubt I will because I'm not really a napper. What am I reading? I started The Hearing Test by Eliza Callahan this morning and am really enjoying it. This was recommended implicitly or explicitly to me by a few different sources, and yeah, as we all figured, I'm definitely liking it. This is about an artist who is losing her hearing, suddenly loses a portion of her hearing, and it's probably going to get worse. And it makes her really introspective, makes her reconsider silence and sounds and herself and people around her. So it's very introspective, emotional, personal history, kind of philosophical, a lot of the phenomenology of existing. She scores movies and commercials also, so it's sound is really part of her world in a very profound way. So yeah, it's a subject that's really interesting to me. I've only read about 20 or so pages. It's a very short book, but so far really enjoying it. The style of writing also is really wonderful, so huzzah. I'm also reading Modern Nature by Jarman. I'm reading this in little spurts. This is journals, so journal entries. So actually I've been reading the corresponding date from 1989, usually steering clear of 1990 because the bulk of the book is 1989, and then 1990, Jarman is a lot sicker. So I've been mostly reading 1989 and the if there is an entry for the corresponding date, then I like to read it. I've been doing this for the past few days. This is also very meditative, introspective, having to deal with being an artist and the deficits of your body, the realities of being a physical body. So it's actually a really good pairing of the very kind of this kind of thinky book. Yes, after I've done a little bit of resting, I need to work on some dissertation excerpt stuff. I'm going to reorganize my dissertation bibliography, my proposed dissertation bibliography. That would be a really lovely project for today. Let's see if I do it. Good morning, good morning. I am very tired yet again because I did not sleep enough. I went out last night, had a grand old time. However, it means that for another night running, I just did not sleep enough hours. So I'm feeling pretty decrepit. I'm gonna teach quite a lot today and maybe work on dissertation stuff, but I might not have the kind of capacity. I have 5 hours of teaching, so it is hard to task switch in that case. Hello, we've had a costume change. I am back home. I'm gonna teach 3 hours online pretty soon tonight, and I am tired. I have finished about 3/4 of the hearing test, maybe a little bit more. And yeah, continue to enjoy it, / also be, I think maybe a little bit unsettled by it. I think it's hitting me at a kind of appropriate moment where I too am kind of pensive and maybe a little lonely and a little nebulous. Maybe I'm always like that, I don't know. But there's sort of a June thing for me currently that is matching the energy of the book. So it's interesting. It's very claustrophobic, and the writing style itself causes part of that claustrophobia. I think to some people it will seem overwritten. I think maybe even to me in some moments. There are some moments that I really, really enjoy and find the writing really good and also the thoughts really interesting. And then sometimes it's a little too much even for me. I'm not sure if that's purposeful or not. I don't know if that is a mistake, whatever that means, or not, because I think it does serve a purpose in getting us in that kind of spiraling mindset of the narrator. So it's been an interesting ride. I wrote about the book this afternoon, and I'm going to, if you will allow me, that was very dramatic taking up of my notebook, share with you some or all of that writing, because I'm lazy and I already did the work, so I'm just going to plagiarize myself. I can't quite put into my thoughts again. I don't have the courage to put my thoughts into words. So from my notes: an array of words brought up by the hearing test: meter, rhythm, shape, geometry, silence, solitude, discerning, tables, numbers, scores, contents. These are in part explicitly in the text. She repeats the motive of scoring throughout as musical score, because it's what she partially is doing as a living, and also as in keeping track. Time is made tangible in the claustrophobic puddle of her thoughts. It's made a thing by the rhythm of that writing. We're talking a lot about substance. How do senses substantiate life? How does organization and categorization? How are senses the tools to that shaping of the world, to turn it into a sort of grid? And how can senses themselves be the result of substance, by which I mean bodies interacting in space, and order and repetition? Sound waves are a shape and also nothingness. They are received by shape, substance and inflammation. Inflammation causes her hearing loss, and there's a sense that the story, as much as there is one, is also overstuffed, misshapen. It's heavy in its words. I can't read what I just wrote. This may be a flaw in the style. It may be an illustration of the situation, of the feeling. It may be bulbous and overhanging, nebulous, thick and elusive. I was reading this morning descriptions of Hanne Darboven's number pieces as smoke. Darboven figures twice so far in the novel, and this makes perfect sense. Her mathematical yet tactile, recursive pieces are marking a length, an anticipation, perhaps a dearth. I was looking at her work for some time this morning with my coffee. I didn't know it previously. Quote, Darboven's work, with its handwriting exercises and checklists, carries us back to our own school days. It recalls the pleasure of counting rhythmically out loud. This is a quotation by Isabel Grau from an article on the artist that I was reading this morning. This resonates with my understanding of the hearing test, this mention of counting out loud. The novel is built around time passing more blatantly than a plot necessarily does. Of course, it's almost always the premise or maybe the process of plot unraveling, time moving forward. But in this case, time being delineated, that is, the shape of time passing, is the plot itself, not just a byproduct or a method. She tracks the months. She references John Cage, again, the intersection of time, space, fullness, silence, and of course, contemplation. The idea of school days also resonates for me, as there's a sort of naive anguish and lostness. She's waiting for instructions, and this waiting is punctuated by hearing tests. I do feel like there's a sort of examination process, after all. Punctuation is another appropriate term, a break, an entirely quotidian word in how we organize language, how we organize meaning and performance. The rhythmic matter of spoken language is music in many ways, and yet we also have punctured eardrums. I couldn't help myself. Punctuation is both a means of regularity and measure, and it's also literally a break to it. So I'm reminded of Einstein on the beach and the pleasure of counting rhythmically out loud in that, of course. The regular slowness, even boringness of an opera that I actually really do love. But all those things are used to create a world that is full of uncanniness in this kind of postmodern state. And I'm reminded of my own habit when I was a child during during recess, of walking around the perimeter of my playground, my cours, counting as a means of filling time. I was unhappy in that particular season of my school in Paris, especially during off times. And I think I was lonely. And so I filled the garden with my own body in motion, and I filled time with regular numbers. Again, writing, shapes, meter. So those are some thoughts that I have thought and didn't want to try to reimagine again.
Completely based on being an actual medium.
So I thought I would come back to you with a kind of wrap up of my 48 hours of reading. What happened? I started and I finished the hearing test. I finished that during the night between Monday to Tuesday. It's 176 pages, so with about 20 pages or so of Derek Jarman, that means that I read about 200 pages in 48 hours. I do think that's probably a little bit more than average. It sort of depends. I definitely go through phases of reading a lot or reading less, etc. Final thoughts for now on the hearing test. Obviously, I really enjoyed this book. I did get sometimes a little tired of it because I think of its alienating, claustrophobic very, very written writing style. That's something I loved about it, and I was very enthusiastic about it, especially at the beginning, and then sometimes it would kind of grate on me. What I did, however, like a lot about that book is that obviously it encouraged me to think and write and want to create, and that's something that I really, really hold dear about books that kind of not just entertain me and make me think, but also just kind of push me to think in a very active way and to want to write also, or to want to create. So that is something extremely appealing about that. That's also been very appealing about the Derek Jarman. I'm reading that quite slowly, but it is also definitely making me want to write, want to connect things in my own life, and so that's a big appeal of it. I'm finding, of course, certain entries more or less interesting than others. That's kind of the pact you're entering into when you're reading diary entries, but they are, as a whole, really hitting me in a very interesting, also very contemplative way. I was writing about them yesterday morning. I won't be reading that to you. I'll only subject you to one journalistic writing entry per video, perhaps, but that's also been making me consider things and make connections. So that's a big appeal of those journal entries. Thank you very much for following along. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye bye.